The Korean boss accidentally ran into his 8-month pregnant ex-wife on a quiet afternoon he never planned for. He had only stepped into the small neighborhood bakery to escape the rain. Warm air, the smell of fresh bread, a place far too soft for a man like him. "Your order will be ready soon," a woman said gently. His body went still. That voice. He turned, and there she was. Hannah, the woman he divorced 2 years ago. The woman who once waited for him every night. The woman he lost. And she was pregnant. 8 months. The sight hit him harder than any bullet ever had. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world outside the bakery faded, leaving only the hum of the oven and the quiet truth growing between them. Her eyes widened in recognition. Fear flickered there, then something deeper. Pain. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, instinctively placing a hand over her stomach. His gaze followed the motion, his chest tightening. "Is it?" His voice failed him. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Rain tapped against the window, like a countdown. "I thought you chose your life," she said softly. Power. Silence. Distance. "I thought leaving you would keep you safe," he replied. The baby shifted. Hannah winced, breath-catching. Without thinking, he stepped forward, but stopped himself inches away, afraid to cross a line that had already cost him everything. "I never stopped loving you," he said. Tears filled her eyes. Love isn't enough when it comes with fear. They stood there, surrounded by warmth that no longer belonged to them, both wondering the same thing. Was fate reopening an old wound, or giving them one last chance before it was too late?
The rain hammered against the windows of Seoul Garden, a modest Korean-American fusion restaurant tucked into a quiet corner of Los Angeles' Koreatown. The neon sign outside flickered intermittently, casting pink and blue shadows across the wet pavement. Inside, the warmth of the kitchen and the soft murmur of conversation created a cocoon against the storm raging outside. Minji Kim moved between tables with practiced efficiency, her movements careful and measured. At 8 months pregnant, every step required consideration, every bend a strategic calculation. Her swollen belly pressed against the black apron she'd tied high under her breasts, the only way it would fit anymore. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of the double shifts she'd been pulling for the past 3 weeks. "Table 7 needs more banchan," called Mrs. Park from behind the counter, her weathered face creased with concern as she watched Minji navigate between the chairs. "And Minjia, please sit down soon. You've been on your feet for 6 hours. Minji offered a tired smile. "I'm fine, Mrs. Park. Just 2 more hours until closing." But she wasn't fine. Her back ached with a persistent throb that radiated down her legs, and her ankles had swollen so much that her shoes felt like vices. Still, she couldn't afford to complain. This job was everything, her lifeline, her survival, the only thing standing between her and complete destitution. She gathered a tray of small dishes, kimchi, pickled radish, seasoned spinach, and headed toward table 7. As she walked, her hand instinctively moved to her belly, feeling the baby shift and kick.
A boy.
She was carrying a boy. The ultrasound technician had asked if she wanted to know, and despite everything, despite the fear and uncertainty that colored every aspect of her pregnancy, she'd said yes. She needed something to hold on to, some concrete detail about the life growing inside her. Her son. Her reason for everything. The restaurant door chimed, and a gust of wind and rain swept in. Minji glanced up reflexively, then froze. Time seemed to slow, the ambient noise of the restaurant fading to a distant hum. Her fingers tightened on the tray until her knuckles went white. Kang Junho stood in the doorway. Even soaked from the rain, he commanded attention. His black suit clung to his broad shoulders, and his dark hair was slicked back from his face, water dripping from the sharp line of his jaw. At 6'2", he towered over the hostess who rushed forward with towels and apologetic bows. His eyes, those cold, calculating eyes that had once looked at her with something approaching tenderness, swept the restaurant with predatory assessment. He hadn't seen her yet. She had perhaps 3 seconds before his gaze would land on her, and she needed to move, needed to disappear into the kitchen, needed to. Their eyes met. Junho's expression, typically schooled into careful neutrality, cracked. His eyes widened fractionally, his lips parting in genuine shock. He stood completely still, ignoring the hostess's nervous chatter, ignoring the small crowd of men in dark suits who'd entered behind him, his associates, his bodyguards, the ever-present shadows that announced his true identity to anyone who knew how to look. Minji's hands began to tremble. The tray wobbled dangerously. Minji. His voice carried across the restaurant, rough with disbelief. She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. For 10 months, she'd imagined this moment, the terrible, inevitable reunion. She'd rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd stand tall and show him that she'd survived without him, that she was strong and independent and perfectly fine. But she wasn't fine. She was 8 months pregnant with his child, working a minimum-wage job, living in a studio apartment with water stains on the ceiling. And now he was here, looking at her like she was a ghost, his eyes dropping to her belly with an expression she couldn't read. She started to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. The tray slipped from her hands. It seemed to fall in slow motion, the small dishes tumbling, the ceramic shattering against the floor with a crash that shattered the frozen moment. Kimchi splattered across her shoes, glass fragments skittering across the tile. "Oh God," Minji whispered, looking down at the mess. Her vision blurred with tears. "Oh God, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." She bent to pick up the pieces, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward and ungainly. Her hands shook as she reached for the larger shards. "Don't." Junho was suddenly there, crouching beside her. His hand closed over her wrist, firm but not painful. "You'll cut yourself." The touch of his skin against her sent an electric shock up her arm. She jerked back instinctively, losing her balance. Junho caught her, his other arm coming around her waist to steady her, and for a moment she was pressed against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with rain. It was too much. The memories crashed over her. Lazy Sunday mornings tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, his laugh rumbling against her ear, the way he'd held her after making love, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin while he whispered promises in Korean. Lies. All of it had been lies. "Let me go," she said, her voice barely audible. "Minji. Let me go." He released her immediately, his hands dropping to his sides. But he didn't step back, didn't give her space to breathe. His eyes roamed over her face, taking in every detail, her exhaustion, her fear, her barely contained panic. Then his gaze dropped again to her belly, and his expression transformed into something raw and almost violent in its intensity. "How far along?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Mrs. Park appeared, flustered and apologetic, a broom in her hands. It's okay, accidents happen. Minji, go sit down. I'll clean this up." "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Park," Minji said quickly. "I'll pay for the dishes, Nonsense. Go sit." Mrs. Park's eyes darted nervously between Minji and Junho, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding its source. "Go to the break room. Take a rest." Minji didn't need to be told twice. She turned and fled, moving as quickly as her ungainly body would allow, weaving between tables while customers stared with undisguised curiosity. She could feel Junho's eyes burning into her back, feel the weight of his presence like a physical thing. The break room was barely larger than a closet, with a small table, 2 plastic chairs, and a mini fridge. Minji collapsed into one of the chairs, her hands pressed to her face as she tried to control her breathing. Her heart hammered against her ribs, each beat painful. He was here. After all this time, after she'd run so far and worked so hard to disappear, he'd found her. Or maybe it was just terrible luck, coincidence, the universe's cruel sense of humor. The baby kicked hard, as if responding to her distress. Minji's hand moved to the spot, rubbing gentle circles. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's okay, baby. Mama's got you." But she didn't have him. She didn't have anything. And now Junho knew. The door opened. She didn't look up, didn't need to. She could feel his presence, could sense him standing in the doorway. Minji. You need to leave, she said to her hands. Please, just leave. How far along? He asked again, his voice harder now, demanding. It doesn't matter. The hell it doesn't. He moved into the room, and she heard the door close behind him. Look at me. She kept her eyes down, studying the chipped polish on her fingernails, the way her hands looked swollen and unfamiliar. Minji.
Look at me.
The command in his voice was impossible to ignore. It was the voice he used with his men, with his enemies, the voice that expected immediate obedience. Against her will, she raised her head. He stood with his back to the door, his arms crossed over his chest. Water still dripped from his hair, leaving dark spots on his expensive suit. His face was a mask of controlled fury, but his eyes betrayed him. They were wild, almost desperate. 8 months, she said quietly. She watched the calculation happen in real time, watched him count backward, watched the realization hit him like a physical blow. It's mine. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Yes. You've been pregnant with my child for 8 months, and you didn't tell me? I left you 10 months ago, Junho. I had my reasons. Reasons? His voice rose, and she saw him struggle to control his temper. What reasons could possibly justify keeping this from me? The sheer audacity of the question sparked anger in her chest, burning through the fear. She pushed herself to her feet, using the table for support. You want to talk about reasons?
Fine.
Let's talk about coming home to find 2 men with guns sitting in our living room. Let's talk about blood on your shirt that wasn't yours. Let's talk about the phone call I overheard where you calmly discussed killing someone like you were ordering takeout. I never brought that life home to you. Yes, you did. The words burst out of her, months of suppressed emotion breaking free. Every single day, you brought it home. Every time you lied about where you'd been, what you were doing, who you really were. I lived with a stranger, Junho. I married a stranger. You knew what I was. His jaw clenched. From the beginning, you knew. I knew you had business interests. I knew you were involved with import-export. She laughed bitterly. I was so naive. Import-export. You made it sound so legitimate, so normal. I didn't know I was marrying a... She couldn't say it. Even now, even after everything, the word stuck in her throat. A gangster, he finished flatly. A criminal. A monster. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He turned away from her, his hand coming up to rake through his wet hair. When you left, no note, no explanation, I thought maybe someone had taken you. Do you have any idea what I did? The people I questioned? The places I searched? I had to make sure you couldn't find me. Why? He spun back to face her, and she saw genuine anguish in his expression. If you hated me so much, if you were so afraid, why not divorce me? Why just vanish? Because you wouldn't have let me go, she said simply. You would have fought it, dragged it out, used your connections and your money and your power to keep me tied to you. And I couldn't breathe anymore, Junho. I was drowning. The silence that fell between them was heavy, laden with all the words they'd never said to each other in their 3 years of marriage. All the truths they'd danced around, all the questions they'd been too afraid to ask. You should have told me, he said finally, his voice rough.
About the baby.
Regardless of everything else, I had a right to know. Did you? She met his eyes. Did you really? What would you have done, Junho? Raised our child in that world. Taught him to follow in your footsteps. Him. Something flickered in his expression. Hope, fear, wonder. She couldn't tell. It's a boy. She shouldn't have told him that. The moment the word had slipped out, she'd regretted it. But it was too late now. Yes. He closed his eyes, his throat working as he swallowed. When he opened them again, they were suspiciously bright. A son. Junho. What's his name? He doesn't have one yet. When are you due? For weeks. Where are you living? That's none of your business. Like hell it isn't. His composure cracked further. You're carrying my child, working in a restaurant until you can barely stand, And you think I'm going to just walk away? Did you hit your head? Have you lost your mind? This is exactly why I didn't tell you, she said, her voice rising to match his. This right here. You think you can just swoop in and take over, make demands, control everything. I'm trying to help you. I don't want your help. I don't want anything from you. Too bad. He stepped closer, and she backed up until her hip hit the table. That's my son you're carrying. My blood. And you're my wife. Ex-wife. We're still married, Minji. You ran away, but you never filed for divorce. Which means you're still my wife, and that's still my child, and I have rights. Rights? She laughed, the sound harsh and broken. You want to talk about rights? What about my right to safety? My right to raise my child away from violence and crime and... The baby kicked hard, and she gasped, her hand flying to her belly. The sudden movement and sharp pain made her dizzy, and she swayed on her feet. Junho caught her instantly, his arms coming around her, supporting her weight. What's wrong? Is it the baby? Do you need a doctor? I'm fine, she said, but even she could hear how weak her voice sounded. Just tired. It's been a long day. When did you eat last? She couldn't remember. Breakfast? Had she had breakfast? She'd been running late, and then Mrs. Park had called asking her to come in early because another server had called in sick. Minji, when did you eat? I don't yesterday. I had dinner yesterday. His expression turned thunderous. You're 8 months pregnant, and you haven't eaten in over 24 hours? I was going to eat after my shift. Jesus Christ. He swept her up into his arms without warning, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing despite her pregnancy. What are you doing? Put me down.
No.
He strode toward the door, kicking it open. You're coming with me. Junho, I'm working. Not anymore. He carried her through the restaurant, ignoring the stares of customers and staff, ignoring Mrs. Park's startled exclamation. One of his men, a younger guy with a scar across his eyebrow, jumped to open the restaurant door. The rain had intensified, coming down in sheets, but a black SUV was already pulling up to the curb. I can't just leave, Minji protested weakly, even as he settled her into the back seat with surprising gentleness. Mrs. Park needs me. I have rent due. I'll take care of it. He slid in beside her, barking orders in rapid Korean to his driver. The SUV pulled away from the curb, tires hissing on the wet asphalt. Minji slumped back against the leather seat, exhaustion crashing over her now that the adrenaline was fading. She was too tired to fight anymore, too tired to argue. Her eyes drifted closed. She felt Junho's hand take hers, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. She should pull away, should maintain her distance, her independence. But his hand was warm and solid, and she was so tired of being alone. I'm taking you home, he said softly. My home. And we're going to talk about this properly. But first you're going to eat and rest, and let my doctor check on you and the baby. I can't go back to that life, she whispered, her eyes still closed. We'll figure it out. There's nothing to figure out. I won't raise my son around violence. Then I'll change. Her eyes flew open. She turned to look at him, searching his face for signs that he was lying, manipulating, saying what she wanted to hear. But he looked serious, almost solemn. You can't just change, she said. It doesn't work like that. You can't walk away from what you are. Watch me. Chapter 2. The Penthouse. The SUV wound through the rain-slicked streets of Los Angeles, climbing into the hills where the lights of the city spread out below like a field of fallen stars. Minji kept her face turned to the window, watching the familiar landscape of Koreatown give way to the sleek, modern architecture of the wealthy neighborhoods she'd once called home. She'd forgotten how much she hated this drive. No, that wasn't true. She hadn't forgotten anything. For 10 months, she'd worked tirelessly to forget the luxury, forget the comfort, forget the intoxicating feeling of being Mrs. Kong Junho. But memory was a stubborn thing, and now, sitting beside him in the warmth of his car, everything came flooding back with painful clarity. Junho hadn't spoken since his declaration about changing. He sat with one ankle crossed over his knee, his phone in his hand, typing messages with swift efficiency. Even now, even in crisis, he was working, managing, controlling. Some things never changed. "Who are you texting?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "My doctor. He's meeting us at the house. And my lawyer." "Your lawyer?" Alarm spiked through her exhaustion. "Why?" "To handle the paperwork." "What paperwork?" He pocketed his phone, turning to face her fully. "The trust fund. For our son. And the property transfer. You'll need somewhere to live, somewhere safe."
No.
She sat up straighter despite the protest of her aching back. "Absolutely not. I don't want your money." "Too bad." "Junho. Minji, we can argue about this, or you can save your energy for the more important battles ahead." His tone was reasonable, but she heard the steel beneath it. "Either way, I'm setting up a trust fund for my son. That's not negotiable." "Everything is negotiable. Not this." He leaned closer, his eyes intense. "For 8 months, you've been struggling alone, working yourself to exhaustion, barely eating, living God knows where and God knows what conditions. That ends now. Tonight. You can't just." "I can and I will." He gentled his voice slightly, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. She fought the instinct to lean into his touch. "I know you're angry with me. You have every right to be. But don't punish our son because of it. He deserves to be safe and provided for." The words hit their mark because they were true. She was being stubborn, letting her pride endanger her child. She'd known it even as she'd pushed herself through shift after shift, even as she'd skipped meals to save money for the hospital bills that terrified her. "I'll pay you back," she said quietly. "Every cent. Once I'm back on my feet after the baby comes." "Minji. I mean it. This is a loan, not a gift. We're not a family, Junho. We're two people who made a mistake." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. She saw the impact in his expression, the way his jaw tightened, his eyes going cold. "A mistake," he repeated flatly. "Yes. Our marriage was a mistake? Our son is a mistake." "I didn't mean," she stopped, closing her eyes. "The marriage was a mistake because it was built on lies. And our son." She placed both hands on her belly protectively. "He's the only good thing that came from it." The SUV turned into a private driveway, pulling up to a security gate. The driver spoke into an intercom, and the gate swung open, revealing the winding path to the penthouse building. Minji's stomach knotted. She'd hoped never to see this place again. The building was aggressively modern, all glass and steel and sharp angles. It rose 30 stories, dominating the hillside, and the penthouse, Junho's penthouse, occupied the entire top floor. She remembered the first time he'd brought her here, how she'd gasped at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the infinity pool on the balcony, the master bedroom with its view of the entire city. She'd felt like a princess in a fairy tale. She'd been such a fool. The SUV pulled into the underground garage, stopping near a private elevator. Junho's men were already there, a small army in dark suits, speaking in low voices into phones and radios. Security. Always the reminder of what he really was. Junho exited first, then reached back to help her out. Minji ignored his offered hand, using the door frame to pull herself up. Her independence was all she had left, and she'd be damned if she'd surrender it so easily. The elevator ride was silent and tense. She watched the floor numbers climb, each one tightening the knot in her stomach. When the doors finally opened directly into the penthouse, she hesitated. "I can't do this," she said suddenly. "I can't be here." "Yes, you can." Junho placed his hand on the small of her back, gently urging her forward. "Just for tonight. Let my doctor check on you and the baby, get some food in you, get some rest. If you want to leave in the morning, I won't stop you." "You promise?" He hesitated, and she knew he was weighing the lie against his need to keep her here. Finally, he said, "I promise I won't physically prevent you from leaving, but I will do everything in my power to convince you to stay." It was as close to honesty as she was likely to get from him. She stepped into the penthouse. Nothing had changed. The open-plan living area stretched before her, minimalist and expensive, with white leather furniture and modern art on the walls. The kitchen was state-of-the-art, all stainless steel and black marble. Beyond the living area, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Los Angeles at night, the rain streaking the glass like tears. Mrs. Kong. Minji turned to see Mrs. Lee, the housekeeper, bustling toward her. The older woman's face was creased with surprise and delight. Mrs. Kong, you've come back. And look at you. Her eyes dropped to Minji's belly. Oh my goodness, baby. Hello, Mrs. Lee, Minji said, managing a weak smile. The housekeeper had always been kind to her, had tried to mother her in the way Junho's own cold efficiency never could. You must be freezing. And exhausted. Come, I'll make you some tea. Have you eaten? Of course you haven't. Look how thin you are. Well, except for the belly, but that doesn't count. Mrs. Lee ushered her toward the couch, chattering in a mix of Korean and English. Sit. I'll bring you something warm. Minji sank onto the couch gratefully, her body nearly weeping with relief as the soft leather cushioned her aching back. She heard Junho speaking in low tones to someone, probably giving orders about the doctor, the lawyer, whatever other pieces he was moving on his chessboard. Mrs. Lee returned with a thick blanket and a cup of ginger tea. Drink this. It's good for pregnancy. My daughter-in-law swore by it when she was expecting. She tucked the blanket around Minji, with maternal efficiency. When are you due? About 4 weeks. For weeks. And you're working at a restaurant? On your feet all day. Mrs. Lee clucked her tongue disapprovingly. Young people these days, no sense. You should be resting, preparing. I needed the money, Minji said simply. Mrs. Lee's expression softened. She glanced over her shoulder to where Junho stood by the windows, speaking into his phone, then leaned closer to Minji. He was like a madman when you left, she whispered. Barely slept, barely ate. I've worked for the Kong family for 20 years, and I've never seen him like that. Minji didn't know what to say to that. She sipped her tea, letting the warmth spread through her. I'm not saying what you did was wrong, Mrs. Lee continued. This life. She gestured vaguely at the penthouse, at the security guards visible through the windows. It's not for everyone. It takes a special kind of strength to be with a man like Mr. Kong. But he loves you. In his way, he loves you. Love isn't enough, Minji said quietly. No, Mrs. Lee agreed. But sometimes it's a start. The doorbell chimed, if the sophisticated musical tone could be called a doorbell. Junho answered it, admitting an older man in an expensive suit carrying a doctor's bag and a younger man with a briefcase who could only be the lawyer. Mrs. Kong, the doctor said, approaching with a professional smile. I'm Dr. Park. Mr. Kong has asked me to examine you and the baby just to make sure everything is progressing normally. Would that be all right? Minji wanted to refuse. She had her own doctor, a kind woman at the community clinic who saw her for a sliding scale fee. But the truth was, she'd missed her last 2 appointments because she couldn't afford to take time off work and she was worried about the baby.
Worried about her blood pressure and the swelling in her ankles and the occasional sharp pains in her side. Yes, she said. That would be, thank you. Why don't we use the bedroom? Dr. Park suggested. You'll be more comfortable lying down. Junho moved to help her up, but Minji waved him off. She could manage this much on her own. She followed Dr. Park down the familiar hallway, past the guest rooms and the office, to the master bedroom at the end. This room had changed. The bed was the same, a massive king-size platform bed with expensive linens. But the personal touches were gone. Her books, her photographs, the little collection of perfume bottles on the dresser. It looked like a hotel room now, impersonal and cold. If you could lie on the bed, please, Dr. Park said, setting down his bag. Minji lowered herself onto the bed with a small grunt of effort. Dr. Park pulled up a chair beside her, his manner brisk but kind. When was your last prenatal visit? He asked. About 6 weeks ago. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't comment. And have you experienced any complications? Bleeding, severe cramping, changes in fetal movement? No bleeding or cramping. He moves a lot. Sometimes it feels like he's doing gymnastics in there. Good, that's good. And your energy levels? How have you been feeling? Minji hesitated. Tired, but I've been working a lot. How much is a lot? Double shifts most days. 10, 12 hours on my feet. Dr. Park's disapproval showed clearly on his face, but he kept his tone neutral. I see. Well, let's take a look, shall we? The examination was thorough and professional. He checked her blood pressure, slightly elevated, which didn't surprise her, and her weight, too low for the stage of pregnancy. He listened to baby's heartbeat with a handheld Doppler, the rapid whoosh-whoosh filling the room. Strong heartbeat, he said. That's excellent. He performed an ultrasound, squirting cold gel onto her exposed belly and moving the wand over her tight skin. Minji watched the screen, seeing the familiar shapes of her son, his head, his spine, his tiny fist near his face. He looks good, Dr. Park said, measuring right on track. Position is good too, head down, getting ready. But I am concerned about you, Mrs. Kong. Your blood pressure is higher than I'd like, and you're underweight. Have you been experiencing headaches? Vision changes? Swelling in your hands and feet? The swelling, yes. Some headaches, but nothing too bad. He made notes on a tablet. I want to see you twice a week until delivery, and you need to stop working immediately. Complete bed rest for the next week at minimum, then modified activity after that. No more 10-hour shifts, no more be on your feet all day. I can't afford. Mrs. Kong. Dr. Park's voice was gentle but firm. You're at risk for preeclampsia. If your blood pressure continues to rise, it could be dangerous for both you and the baby. I understand you have financial concerns, but right now, your health must be the priority. Minji closed her eyes. She'd known, on some level, that she was pushing too hard. But what choice had she had? Bills didn't pay themselves, and babies needed things, so many things. Clothes and diapers and a crib, and a car seat and medical care, and I'll make sure she rests. Junho's voice came from the doorway. Minji's eyes flew open. She hadn't heard him enter. He stood leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. How long have you been there? She demanded. Long enough. He pushed off the doorframe and approached the bed, his eyes on the ultrasound screen. Is that him? Yes, Dr. Park said. Your son. Would you like me to print some images? Yes. Junho's voice was rough with emotion. He moved closer, standing beside the bed, his eyes never leaving the screen. He's so small. About 5.5 pounds at this stage, Dr. Park said. He'll gain about half a pound a week for the next few weeks. By the time he's born, he should be around 7 or 8 pounds, which is perfect. Junho reached out slowly, hesitantly, and placed his hand on Minji's belly. She stiffened at the touch, but didn't pull away. The baby kicked, right where Junho's palm rested, and she saw wonder flash across his face. He's strong, Junho murmured. Yes, Dr. Park agreed. He was printing images, the machine whirring softly. But he needs his mother to be strong, too. Mrs. Kong, I'm serious about the bed rest. Doctor's orders. I'll make sure she follows them, Junho said. Good. Dr. Park handed him a stack of ultrasound images, then began cleaning the gel off Minji's belly with professional efficiency. I'll come by day after tomorrow to check on you both. In the meantime, rest, eat well, stay hydrated, and keep your feet elevated when possible. After Dr. Park left, Junho remained standing beside the bed, looking down at the ultrasound images. His finger traced the outline of the baby's profile, the tiny nose, the curve of the forehead. A son, he said softly. I have a son. You don't have anything, Minji said, pulling her shirt down over her belly. He's my son. Ours. He looked up at her, his eyes hard. He's our son, Minji. Our blood, our DNA, our responsibility. You can hate me all you want, but you can't deny that. I don't hate you. The word surprised her, but as soon as she said them, she realized they were true. I'm afraid of you. I'm afraid of what loving you would mean for me and for our child. Then let me prove you wrong. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to crowd her. Stay here. Let me take care of you while you're pregnant. After the baby comes, if you still want to leave, if you still think I'm a monster, I'll let you go. I'll set you up with enough money to live comfortably, and I won't interfere with how you raise our son. You're lying. I'm not. His voice was steady, certain. I love you enough to let you go, if that's what you truly want. But I'm asking you to give me a chance. 1 month. That's all. 1 month. Until the baby comes, and for 2 weeks after. 6 weeks total. Let me show you that I can change, that I can be the man you need me to be. It was a terrible idea. Everything in her screamed that she should refuse, should walk out of this penthouse and never look back. But she was so tired, and the doctor's warnings echoed in her mind, and the thought of returning to her tiny, cold apartment, of working herself to exhaustion just survive. No violence, she said. No guns in the house. No business meetings here. No associates dropping by. Agreed. And I want my own space. My own room. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt. Quickly masked. Of course. And we're not married. Not really. This is just temporary. An arrangement. For now, he said. But I'm not giving up on us, Minji. I'm not giving up on my family. Before she could respond, Mrs. Lee appeared in the doorway. Dinner is ready. I made seaweed soup, very traditional for pregnant mothers. And there's rice and banchan and some bulgogi. Minji's stomach growled audibly, betraying her. When was the last time she'd had a home-cooked Korean meal? Come on, Junho said, standing and offering his hand. Let's get some food in you. This time, she took his hand. The dining table could seat 12, but Mrs. Lee had set places at one end, close together, intimate despite the formal setting. Steam rose from the dishes, seaweed soup rich with sesame oil, perfectly cooked rice, an array of banchan, including Minji's favorite pickled radish, and thinly sliced bulgogi that made her mouth water. Minji ate like she was starving, because she'd forgotten what it was like to have enough food, to not have to calculate the cost of every bite. Mrs. Lee beamed with satisfaction, regularly refilling Minji's bowl and pressing more side dishes on her. Junho ate sparingly, his attention focused on Minji. She could feel his eyes on her, cataloging every detail. The hollow of her cheeks, the way her clothes hung loose on her frame despite her pregnant belly, the exhaustion evident in her every movement. When did you last see a dentist? He asked suddenly. She paused mid-bite. What? Your teeth. When was your last checkup? I don't. A year ago? Before I left. She put down her spoon defensively. Why? Pregnancy can affect your dental health. You should see someone. Add it to the list, she said dryly, along with the twice-weekly doctor visits and the bed rest I can't afford to take. You can afford it now. Junho, we made a deal. For the next 6 weeks, you let me take care of you. That includes medical care, dental care, whatever you and the baby need. He set down his chopsticks, his expression serious. I know you value your independence. I respect that. But right now, you need to accept help. She wanted to argue, to maintain her pride, but the truth was, she was terrified. Terrified of something going wrong with the delivery. Terrified of not being able to care for her baby properly. Terrified of ending up homeless with a newborn because she'd missed too much work. Okay, she said quietly, for 6 weeks. After dinner, Mrs. Lee showed her to the guest room at the opposite end of the hall from the master bedroom. It was smaller but still luxurious, with a queen-size bed, an ensuite bathroom, and windows overlooking the city lights. I've put some clothes in the closet, Mrs. Lee said. Your old things. Mr. Kong, he kept everything. Said you might come back for them. Minji's throat tightened. She'd left with only what she could carry in a single suitcase, abandoning her entire wardrobe, her books, her personal items. She'd assumed Junho would have thrown everything away or donated it. I'll leave you to rest, Mrs. Lee said kindly. If you need anything at all, just press the intercom button by the bed. Someone is always available. After she left, Minji opened the closet. Her clothes hung in neat rows, designer dresses she'd worn at charity galas, casual wear workout clothes. Everything cleaned and preserved, waiting for her return. She pulled out a soft cotton nightgown and went into the bathroom. The shower was large and modern, with multiple shower heads and controls she'd never quite mastered. She turned on the water and waited for it to warm up. When she caught sight of herself in the mirror, she stopped. She barely recognized the woman looking back. Her face was gaunt, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Her hair, once glossy and well-maintained, hung limp and dull past her shoulders. And her body, her belly was huge and round, but the rest of her looked almost skeletal. Her collarbones jutted out sharply, her arms thin and weak-looking. No wonder Junho had been shocked. She showered until her skin was pink and warm, using the expensive products that had been left on the shelf. The scent brought back memories. Mornings preparing for her day, evenings washing away fundraisers and dinners, and the constant performance of being Mrs. Kong Junho. By the time she dried off and put on the nightgown, she was nearly dead on her feet. She barely made it to the bed before her legs gave out. The mattress was soft and perfect, the sheets cool and clean, and she sank into them with a groan of relief. She should have felt guilty, lying here in luxury while just yesterday she'd been in her sparse apartment with its lumpy futon and thin walls. But she was too tired for guilt, too tired for anything except blessed sleep. She was drifting off when she heard the door open quietly. "Minji?" Junho's voice, soft in the darkness. "What?" she mumbled, not opening her eyes. "I just wanted to check on you. Make sure you had everything you needed." "I'm fine. Tired." She heard him move closer, felt the bed dip slightly as he sat on the edge. "I meant what I said earlier. About changing. About proving to you that I can be different. Junho, I'm too tired for this conversation. I know. I need you to know. When you left, when I couldn't find you, I thought I'd lost my mind. I tore this city apart looking for you. I called in every favor, threatened every contact, offered rewards that would have bankrupted most men. That's not romantic. Junho, that's terrifying." "I know." His hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers threading through hers. "I know, but I need you to understand, you weren't just my wife. You were the only real thing in my life. The only person who looked at me and didn't see a weapon or a tool or monster. Until I did," she whispered. "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. "I've done terrible things, Minji. Things I can't take back. I justify them as necessary, as protecting what was mine, as survival in a brutal world. But when I think about our son, about him growing up and asking what his father does..." His voice broke slightly. "I don't want him to be afraid of me." Minji opened her eyes, adjusting to the dim light filtering in from the city outside. Junho sat beside her, his profile sharp in the shadows, his hand still holding hers. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to be someone he can be proud of, someone you can trust. I want to be the man you thought you married. That man never existed. Then I'll create him." He looked down at her, his eyes intense even in the darkness. "I'll create him for you, for our son. I'll walk away from the business, go legitimate, do whatever it takes. You can't just walk away. You know that. There are obligations, loyalties, enemies who'd see it as weakness. I'll find a way." His certainty was almost frightening. "I always find a way." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was tender, almost reverent, and it made her chest ache with confused emotions. "Sleep," he said softly. "Rest. Let me worry about everything else." He stood and moved toward the door. Just before he left, he paused. "For what it's worth," he said, "meeting you, marrying you, that was the best decision I ever made. Even if you never forgive me, even if you leave the moment our son is born, I'll never regret it." Then he was gone, the door clicking softly shut behind him. Minji lay in the darkness, her hand still warm from his kiss, her mind spinning. She'd meant to keep her distance, to maintain her emotional walls, to remember all the reasons she fled in the first place. But it was harder than she'd expected, because beneath the gangster, beneath the violence and the lies, there was still the man who'd made her laugh, who'd held her through nightmares, who'd looked at her like she was something precious and rare. That man was dangerous in a completely different way. Chapter 4. The Adjustment. Minji woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of fresh coffee. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then memory crashed back. Junho, the restaurant, the penthouse. She sat up slowly, her back protesting, her bladder screaming for attention. Pregnancy was so glamorous. After using the bathroom, she found a bathrobe in the closet, thick, white, expensive, and padded out into the hallway. Voices drifted from the kitchen, speaking in rapid Korean. She followed the sound. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and join us for part 2. You won't want to miss what happens next.